They told me for years there was no money in podcasting. Well, they were all wrong.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Talking with Tarashuk podcast. I am your host, Will Tarashuk. It's T as in Thomas, A-R-A-S-H-U-K, and we are from Cube Recording Studios in Montclair, New Jersey. And my guest is a very good friend. She is a very important person in my life. Also, the one who makes sure I get my paychecks, cash in ready every single week. The one and only Jill Malandrino.
Thanks for having me here. Pretty awesome studio. I'm impressed, Will.
Yeah, it's cool, right? I mean, I told you 3 years ago in my interview how big I was into podcasting. And 3 years later, here I am partnering with the studio. And finally, I get to bring you in here, Joe. I've been waiting for this day for a very long time.
Yeah, and so have I. To your point in your intro, the podcasting world has certainly exploded, and it's ubiquitous with how we consume news and entertainment. So good call on your part. I think, 6-7 years you've been doing it at this point?
7 years. It's every February. It's like 2 days after my 20th birthday, I started podcasting. And then it just never stopped. Episode 300, my wrestling podcast, is coming up in just a few weeks, which is my baby, my original podcast. This is episode 26 or so of Talking with Tarashuk. So overall, I've probably done easily over 400 podcasts in total over that time, and I'm just getting started.
Well, let me interview you. What do you enjoy the most about podcasting? Is it the actual interview itself, or do you enjoy the editing part of it? What do you like the most?
I feel I am the best version of myself when I'm podcasting because I can just talk without concern. I can just express myself super freely. So definitely the act of actually doing a podcast, whether talking about wrestling, talking about finance, which we're going to talk about, talking about life coaches, baseball, what have you. It's just, what am I generally interested in? It lets me explore my creativity, and it lets me be my authentic self in the most fluid way, because the P stands for personal in podcasts.
Yes,
so we are here because you are a global market supporter. We have a lot to talk about finance, but you just came back from a conference in Austin, Texas, which I am still mad I couldn't go. But shout out to my brother. He's getting married in October. So tell me about Consensus, what it is, what you did in Austin, and kind of just what it is we do for a living.
Yeah, so Consensus by CoinDesk is the world's largest digital asset conference and the world's longest conference. There was, I remember when I first started covering it for Nasdaq in 2018, it took place in a hotel in Midtown Manhattan. And for whatever media was there, we were kind of in a hallway in the lobby of, I believe it was Hilton Midtown, whatever it was. Flash forward into 2022, 4 years later, after 2 years of it being virtual because of the pandemic, over 17,000 people were in the Austin Convention Center. And it wasn't just about blockchain, which is what makes it really exciting. This was about blockchain and all of the verticals that it touches. It's not just about crypto and Bitcoin and digital assets. This is about the technology that's going to drive Web3, Meta, NFTs, as I know a lot of your listeners are into NFTs, and all of the different brands that it can potentially touch. This isn't just about finance. It's about insurance, healthcare, commerce, you name it. Anything that has some sort of a ledger attached to it, which all industries do, is how blockchain technology is going to be deployed. Here's an example that everyone can understand, whether you're in technology or finance. Think about the supply chain. And we're all very well aware of what's happening with the supply chain and constraints and so forth. Even something as, we know at Chipotle, for example, when they had a couple of cases, separate cases of E. coli contamination. If you have everything on blockchain being tracked that way, you're able to track it to source. And that helps healthcare workers, the supply chain, food care, CDC, FDA, track where there is that, thank God for editing, where that disruption is within the supply chain. And blockchain is what allows for all of this to take place. So it was really interesting to see how it wasn't just about Bitcoin and digital assets, but it was about all of the different worlds that this technology can unlock.
Well, Web3 definitely scares me. Because we still haven't really mastered Web 2 yet. But it is the future, whether we like it or not. I think some aspects of it are going to be very, very successful. I think some aspects are going to definitely crash and burn. It's just a free market we live in. So, but you said a lot of big words there. So blockchain. People might not know what actually the blockchain actually is. So like in layman's term, explain to me like I'm 4 years old. What is the actual blockchain?
So blockchain is also synonymous with distributed ledger technology. So what it does is it assigns protocols that allow transparency. It's for you to be able to track any sort of transaction that takes place. So here's an example. Rather than having to have a bank as an intermediary, I can just take money, whatever form of currency it is, and automatically transact it with you.
Right.
Now, this is being deployed around the world to billions of people. Some hotspots are South America, Southeast Asia, Africa, where they don't have legacy financial institutions. So this is how they're building cross-border payment. This is how they are accruing sources of revenue using blockchain technology and whatever asset they are transacting business in. But this is the building block that allows that to happen. So when we think about what are the use cases, is this happening in real time? It already is working in real time. Many of the listeners on this podcast, I would imagine, are into music. Well, think about using blockchain technology to acquire and sell tickets.
Right.
It's a safer way, a more transparent way where you don't have to worry about, oh, did I get scammed? Scalping is illegal, but it's a way to remove the middle person and transact business through this ledger technology.
And it's like a complete unique digital code that, at least for now, can't be hacked or kind of disrupted.
Well, I mean, can it be hacked? Can it be disrupted?
Anything can be hacked. It's just insofar it hasn't.
Right. So, well, I mean, there have been scams, of course, when you think of Bitcoin and other digital assets.
NFTs as well.
And NFTs as well. But you can make the same argument with
real money.
Cash.
Yeah, regular money.
You can make the same argument with fine art, right?
Yep.
Copies being made, fakes being made. And you have to remember, too, as it relates specifically to digital assets, Bitcoin's only 13 years old. It's a very, very young asset class. So as it matures, as a regulatory framework is placed around it, the hope will be that you will see fewer scams. But it's not even just about financial assets. It's everywhere. I mean, anything can be hacked.
Right.
So I think because this industry is young and it understands that, it's trying to be as proactive as it can be versus reacting to it.
Right. And the whole appeal of crypto or the blockchain is that it isn't regulated. It's decentralized. But isn't it, for crypto in particular, for it to be successful, doesn't it kind of have to be recognized or centralized or from the viewpoint of the financial institutions or the government to become legit, for lack of a better word?
And that's what we're seeing. We are starting to see a framework be placed around it. It was last week, in fact, there was a proposal where the CFTC will regulate cryptocurrency instead of the SEC, or at least place a framework around it for the SEC to create a more structured framework around it.
Right.
So you have that. And yes, it's decentralized, but everyone I have spoken to in the industry and other folks that I've seen in media want to work with the regulators to help provide that legitimacy around it. And at the end of the day, you want public investors to be safe. Again, it's a young asset class and the technology moves so quickly. As you know, every iteration of technology moves quicker than the regulators can keep up with it. It's not simply easy to regulate and create legislation.
Right.
It takes time, and the technology evolves quicker. It's deployed quicker than human brains can create regulatory framework around. So now that President Biden put an executive order around the digital asset space, there are mandates for the regulators to start to put a framework around it. So I think we're in a good place. There is frameworks in the works, if you will, and it's just a matter of time. They're not going to approve something just because the industry wants it. Their mandate is, the regulator's mandate is to protect public investors.
Yeah.
So I think we're at a good jump off here, and it will provide legitimacy. You will continue to see mass institutional adoption. We've certainly seen that over the past couple of years, especially with the pandemic and retail investors getting more involved, whether it's a crypto space or stock investing in general.
Yeah, because I guess the biggest critique of crypto is what can you really do with it other than hold it? Now that there are industries kind of teasing, you can buy things with crypto. International, you can do a lot of things with crypto. El Salvador's national currency is now in crypto. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of, we're getting there. But get back to the original point, the allure of crypto is that the government isn't involved. But for it to be legitimized, it kind of has to be involved so you can start doing things with it. So doesn't that kind of just take out like the sex appeal behind crypto and the attractiveness to going towards crypto. It's kind of like, well, in order to make this legitimate, you kind of got to defeat the purpose of what it was created for to begin with. But that also leads to good things, and you can actually do stuff with it.
Right. I don't think it's an either or situation anymore.
Right, okay.
It's no longer us versus them. The fact of the matter is, you can't think of it as, yes, there is investing in ETH and Soldano and Avalanche and Bitcoin. That said, it's not just about the investment profile going from the bottom left of the chart to the top right of the chart, right? It is more about transacting business, and it's more about revenue streams. And to me, that's the sexy part of it, because you're seeing practical applications with it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, there are billions of people who are underbanked or unbanked, and this is their way of being able to transact business and have revenue streams.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
If you think about it in a very linear sense, that it's only valuation, which is how the general public thinks of Bitcoin, it's only a store of value. That's not the case. When you start thinking about it from the respect of transacting and revenue streams, that's the sexy part of the story. Those are use cases for it.
Interesting. I'm excited to see where it goes. I personally don't have any crypto. I don't like. I get it conceptually, but I don't get it. You know, like I have my money in like, real money, for lack of a better term. But I think it's here to stay. It's not going to go anywhere, and eventually it'll adapt into what it needs to be, what that is. You know, that's up for debate, and what all these conferences really are about, what we can use it for. So what else was there at Web3? Like what's consensus? Something that really stood out to you as just like, oh, I didn't see that coming.
I just want to point out one thing that might help you conceptualize it better.
Okay.
In the late 90s, that's when I first started my career in trading before I transitioned to media, there was the dot-com boom, right? Where we had all of these companies had a .com attached to the end of their name, and they had massively high valuations, even crazier than what we just recently see with the valuation reset in the market. And there was a company called Pets.com, and it was one of those infamous companies that was synonymous with the .com boom. Now, flash forward 20 years later, it's essentially Chewy.com. So while we might not have been able to conceptualize it then, like really an online marketplace for pets, we didn't even really understand what the internet was or what the possibilities were back then. Well, flash forward 20 years and you have Chewy.com. And we've seen how successful that company has been, and it's here and it's legit. And I don't think you'll see the proliferation of the .com companies happen again, if you will. But I do think that you'll see larger established companies start to make acquisitions, and now that because we understand how the marketplace works. So you have to think of it in those terms. We didn't understand this in from the 80s up until where we are today. And now internet usage, mobile usage, what we're seeing in the digital asset space is ubiquitous with our daily lives. So I think you need to think of it in those terms. But back to what we saw at the conference. Granted, we did 40 hits in 2 days. I really didn't have the opportunity to run around as much as I could. But it was pretty awesome. We set up on a Thursday, and to see the entire convention center empty, but all of the equipment, all the crews building it, and they built, I think it was 3 or 4 sound stages all throughout the floor. That was pretty amazing. And this was all erected in one day.
Wow.
So if that helps you conceptualize the scope of it, they had one area called the Metaverse Zone, which I thought was the coolest part of the floor. And again, I got to see it for about 5 minutes because we were so busy on our end. Yeah. And they did a lot of cool digital activations around NFTs and meta. So visually, it was pretty awesome to see. I could tell you, my coolest experience was, of course, there was a number of parties. And the cool thing with the digital asset space, they're not friends spend money on parties. But I went to one activation where it was basically Photoshop on steroids. They had a local graffiti artist from Austin there using a digital graffiti gun, if you will, the spray. And you basically, like Photoshop or any editing tool, you pointed the gun at the editing piece that you needed to do. And you could either spray, you could delete. He taught us all how to write our names in graffiti. It was really cool to see that. And then asking him, which form do you like better? The one thing he liked, you could adjust the pressure better when you do it with real paint, but he was just blown away that digitally you can replicate and teach and show people how to do this and just be able to hit erase and bring, a new student on. So
Yeah.
that was really cool. I think my biggest takeaway was the NFT conversation, because it's being used now. Brands, especially luxury brands, are using NFTs to unlock exclusive, either social experiences. Let's say, for example, there is an exclusive shoe by Nike, just a random example, that you need this NFT to unlock that social experience and then to go into the store, and that NFT is your currency to get those limited edition shoes. Brands are already using this. They're also talking about how to use NFTs as a way for rewards programs or gamification, or just unlocking exclusive experiences. And it's being done now. And I know you will appreciate this, but even when it comes to entertainment, incorporating the physical experience of going to a concert and also the digital experience of going to a concert. And I think, one of the silver linings of the pandemic was it showed us how to do that. It accelerated all these trends that we would have been looking at 5 to 10 years from now.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Based out of that conversation, it also lends to, for a brand, you're unlocking that experience between digital to brick and mortar store. It's another distribution and engagement channel for them. So it's not just about Twitter and Facebook and Insta and TikTok. They actually have these immersive digital worlds that's also part of their distribution channel. I also think with NFTs, we were also talking about how it can be used for charitable purposes as well. And there are a number of NFTs that are projects that are working on that. So to me, that was really the key takeaway, how NFTs are kind of that dipping your toe in the water of the metaverse.
Yeah, NFTs also confuse me. I mean, I get the idea. It's like completely one of a kind. There's value in it because because it's completely original, and two, people are buying them, right? People give value to things because people are going to buy them. In the metaverse, NFTs work in the metaverse hand in hand. It's interesting. Like you say, a concert experience. I can see it totally taking off. Like you can't actually afford to go to the physical concert in person. You can go there from your home. You just got to put your little headset on and you experience the full glory of that concert. I see that version of the metaverse taking off huge. I see it being huge in gaming. I see it things with healthcare being successful. But I don't buy that it's going to work in every aspect, because what are the rules and who makes the rules? When someone asks me about the metaverse, the first question I ask, what are my rights? And people kind of look at me like, huh? It's like, no, I mean, what are my rights? What am I allowed to do and not do, and who makes those rules? Do you really want to go into a universe owned by Jeff Bezos or owned by Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates, where they make all of the rules and there's no process to fight those rules? It's, just don't use it. Well, the internet we're seeing now is life cannot exist without the internet, right? If you don't have the internet, you don't have a business. If your business doesn't have a website, you don't exist. So you have a society dependent on the internet, which right now doesn't really have set rules, which is 2D space. You're going to bring into a 3D space, which even less rules and more confusion. So I don't even know where to go from there, but with who owns the metaverse, what are my rights? What am I allowed to do and not do? And how we prevent the end of the world in the digital metaverse?
So the genesis of Web3 was, to your point, with what we're seeing with Web2. Apple, Google, Microsoft, those companies are the X in Web2. Facebook, Twitter, wherever you're transacting your digital experience as you know it now. Web3 is along the lines of it being a more user-based, content creator-controlled space. Now, how is that regulated? What are the rules? It's in its infancy, and that's what we're trying to figure out. Also, the other question is, well, what happens with all the data? And the challenge with that is coming to global standardization with data is incredibly tricky. Part of that is, as an example, our data privacy rules in the US are very different than what they are in the EU.
Yep.
That's one thing. When it comes to free speech and so forth, we are unique in the fact that we have the First Amendment. Other areas of the world don't. And it's not just because we have these amendments. Historically, it's a fundamental thing that we value free speech. We value openness here in the US. In Europe, they tend to be more protective of their data. you also have to think about it in the context of these are all different countries within one continent. The US is all different states within one country.
Yep.
Within North America. Our values, our laws, with the exception of the state level, are unanimous, right? We don't have that separation like all these little countries do within one continent.
Yep.
So those are where the fundamental differences are. What I will say with Web3 is because it is user built, I think it's great for the creator economy, which is certainly the way that we're going. I mean, think about it, I guess, as the modern day contracting, freelancing, even for gamers. Technically, there is no end to a game because if users are building that content, they can just continue to build worlds and more worlds.
Yep.
Again, it's in its infancy. There will be challenges with standardizing it, but because it is user controlled, I don't think we'll have the overlord feeling, if you will, by the big tech companies that we have now. That said, Web 2 tech companies are not just going to let this go by the by.
Right.
You know, obviously they're going to want to be involved. How that plays out, that's anyone's guess. And those are the questions that I ask, you know, in the course of my interviewing. And that's essentially the answers that I get too. You know, they're still trying to figure out what this looks like. And I think when you take a step back and you think of Meta, you think of Web3, it could be very, very, very good. But if it's bad, it could also be very, very bad.
Yeah.
I think the challenge is, and we're seeing this now, especially in the polarized state that we exist in, when you think of augmented reality, virtual reality, deep fakes, it's going to be really hard to discern what's real, what's not.
And we
already
don't know what's real and what's not real. Like that's my big thing. Web3 is incredibly exciting, and it is an infancy. The fact that we don't know the answer to these questions is okay, right? That's to be expected. If they had the answer to these questions, I'd be a little more concerned. But the question, the fact they're being asked is good. But my thing is like, guys, if I was the all dominant rule of the world, I'd be like, guys, let's just take a breath, take a beat, slow down, because we still have so much chaos in Web 2. Let's kind of figure that out first, and like take your time into building Web 3 into what it should be and what it could be, instead of just we gotta get there right now, so fast, right now, now, money, right? Because like if you gotta do something, you gotta do it right. And
I get it, but I don't think fixing Web 2 is necessarily the answer. I think it is a challenge to fix it. The regulation around it is outdated.
Okay.
So are we going to sit around and wait, or are we going to try and develop other technologies that perhaps could be a better path? I think that it's even bigger than what's happening in technology right now. I just think it's a current state of affairs that is making everything really hard to regulate because everything's a political hot button, or it gets turned into that kind of issue. The current regulation that moderates Web 2 social media as of now is Section 230. I mean, it's over 20 years old. And that is the challenge. Are they publishers or are they not publishers? Who's moderating? Who's getting kicked off? Are we protecting free speech? Although there's such a big misunderstanding of how the First Amendment technically works. That's related to the government. These are private companies. Private companies can do what they want in terms of who their user base is. And look, if that impacts their revenue stream, if that impacts their user base, well, that's a business decision that they chose to make. So I think understanding all of that is what makes Web 2 so challenging. And I think when you're looking into developing Web 3, all of these is in the back of our minds as you're looking to develop that.
I see. So you can kind of take the failures of Web 2 and kind of fix those wrongs instead of in Web 2 in a brand new thing in Web 3.
And that's innovation.
Yeah,
that's how all industries evolve.
I am all for innovation. Like if someone wants to, if Zuckerberg wants to develop the metaverse or whoever wants to do his metaverse, you are 100% allowed to do that. Like I would never be like just stop innovating or create a law to stop innovation. No. Innovation, free market capitalism is inherently, I think, good as a whole. Right? It moves society forward. Now you have checks and balance with capitalism, which and kind of, regulate monopolies, which may or not be happening, but to stop innovation because it might be dangerous, no, I think that's silly. I think that's actually a step backward, for sure.
Well, that goes back to our point before where when it comes to digital assets, whether you're transacting or revenue streams or you're investing in it, again, it is widely used in Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia, of all places. And the problem is we're not innovating here. And we're falling behind from a global respect. We tend to think so US centric. Meanwhile, it's being deployed globally and there's regulation being built around it. And we don't want to fall behind with that innovation.
All right, so there's a lot of Web 2, Web 3, crypto. We could probably get in it for days and days and days, but it's making my head hurt. And I bet people listening going, what in God's name are they talking about? So let's throw it back. Trade Talks. Trade Talks. Trade Talks has a wild ride. So you started out as a global market supporter, trader, into media. So kind of take me through all that, how you started in like financial media, a reporter, trading, and how'd you get into media? Because you are really damn good at it. So I don't know how you go from like a trading like on the mid, like Chris Dearborn on his desk, to I'm Joe Malandrino, welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks, and boom. So take me through that road.
It's like you evolve as you learn the podcast industry. So I started off in trading in 1998 on the institutional equity trading desk. And the last desk I was on, they shut down the equity division in its entirety going into the financial crisis. So seeing that the industry was evolving, I decided to make a career shift. I was hired at TheStreet.com. The former director of research on the desk I was at prior was co-managing Jim Cramer's charitable trust at The Street. They opened up an options trading product and she asked me to come on and run that. I met Cramer. I sat outside of his office for 5 years. And one day he turned to me, he's like, Jill, you know the markets, go down to the New York Stock Exchange, start reporting. So from there, I worked, that was when I was first introduced to Nasdaq because, Will, as you know, Nasdaq will engage outside reporters to help support their listed companies, their business partners. So that's how I first hooked up at Nasdaq. So I was at the Street for 5 or 6 years reporting from New York Stock Exchange, Nasdaq, the exchanges in Chicago. So Chicago Board of Trade, SIBO, of course, those are no longer there as they were in their original form. And I also reported from the NYMEX, actually on the water, the Hudson River. It's no longer there either, as things have been digitized and consolidated. So after the Street, I went to the Voice of America, which is actually the State Department is the one that owns it, if you will. It was born out of World War II as an agency to provide news around the world. So they have media outlets in virtually every country on the planet to give them news from America that was less propaganda, if you will. So I reported on U.S. markets and African markets, and I loved reporting on African markets. And I hope to extend our coverage from a fintech perspective onto the continent. And it really was self-taught. I did not have any formal broadcast training. One of the first reporters I worked with at the Street, her name was Alex Steele. She's an anchor for Bloomberg on one of the shows in the morning now. And I remember watching her and I'm like, Alex, I want to be as good as you are. Show me the ropes. And she was a great mentor, but the best piece of advice she ever gave me, I remember what she was wearing that day when she told me, she's like, Jill, do you have your own personality, figure it out, let it evolve. I appreciate the compliment. You want to do what I do, but it's a craft and you let your personality come through. So if you think about anchors and reporters that I either try to emulate or pick up tips from, so not only am I listening to the financial news, but I'm also watching their style. I think Howard Stern does an amazing job when it comes to interviewing.
Yep.
I think he is great at, he has his prepared questions, but he's so good at hearing something and then turning it into a whole other direction. And that is what I've noticed. I feel like since the beginning of the pandemic, because you and I went from 0 to 60, doing 700 pieces of content a year to 1,500, the more practice that you have, I feel like my interviews are more thoughtful for that reason. Tyler Matheson on CNBC does the same thing as well. He's very good at taking complex topics such as what we were just talking about before with the digital asset space and asking questions in a way that makes it more layman's terms. So for me, if I have a question, I need follow-up, I know my audience does too. Yep. So I'm trying to be more thoughtful with my interviews. And that really has been the epiphany moment for me. And those are the type of styles that I try to emulate.
Definitely. That's phenomenal advice. And I've been telling you that forever too. I was like, listen, Jill, you are such a personality. Like the best interviews you have are sometimes are the ones that are not as prepared with people you know, like a Russell or a Brian or a Chris or a Ryan or whoever, right? Just kind of like, we're just gonna do it and talk and just kind of riff, because it's relatable, right? I remember like when we kind of flirted the idea of a podcast, we did a few test runs. You still had that, I call it the news voice, where it's very, ask question, get an answer, ask question, get an answer. But no, like I had most of the past few years, you have a lot more follow-up, a lot more insight, a lot more, here's what I think. And I think that's incredible, not just for Trade Talks, just for anyone who creates content.
Right. I think part of it is, as the show has grown, we've been able to have more editorial control and be more discerning with our guests. I also think because of the pandemic and we have the opportunity we're in a hybrid environment now, 2 days in studio, 3 days out, the quality of our guests, I know that's not the best term to use, but because we can do interviews from anywhere versus having to get someone in studio for a 10-minute block, we're able to get different types of talent on, a more diverse talent on. A lot of times when things are scripted, it's, if it's specific to a listed company coming on, or perhaps a client to one of our business units come on, those tend to be more directed from the communications teams. And while Trade Talks was born to support our business units, we do have to do that kind of content.
Right,
but we've let them know, if we have natural follow-up, if we want expansion on an idea, we're going to ask. If you want inclusion on Trade Talks, we're bringing you on because you're a thought leader in our space. You're a CEO of a Nasdaq listed company. We want to hear what you have to say raw. This is why people are tuning in. We want to hear, okay, you know what? You're a CEO of PayPal, as an example. You're the CEO of, whether it's a Nasdaq listed company or a New York Stock Exchange listed company. If you are running a company like a Twitter, like a Facebook, like a PayPal, like a Walmart, like a Target, I want to hear what you think about the social media space, what you think about commerce, what you think about your industry getting digitized. So while they are coming on with a specific story to tell, how lucky are we to get executives on our show that can talk with an inside point of view on trends? That's the coolest thing. And then, of course, as you and I think about our editorial calendar as it aligns with Financial Literacy Month in April, as an example, we want our focus there. We want our focus in June to really be in the digital asset space with consensus, with NFT, NYC NFT happening next week, the week of June 20th. And we want to ask those follow-up questions because, to your point before, I don't know what metaverse means. Tell me. Because I don't know, as the talent, I know my audience has that question. And you shouldn't be afraid to ask. It's not, Jill's reporting on digital assets, she should know what this means. Well, no, I don't. And I'm trying to learn, and I want my audience to learn. So never be afraid to ask questions. Of course, I do my homework and I do research, particularly in the digital asset space. A lot of things when I riff with, when we have Jeff Kilburg on, we have Russell Rhodes on, we have Mark Sebastian on, and we're riffing about the market and what's happening in real time, what's happening in the options space. Well, that's my background. I could take a look and see what's happening on the tape and what the macro headlines are on the day, and I can go. We just 1, 2, 3, go. But when it comes to newer coverage of mine, I do the research and I want to ask.
Yeah, of course. Like, you have to be curious. I often say, like, don't ask questions you already know the answer to, because your audience is going to tell that you don't care, or the audience is going to know that you already know. Like, I like asking questions that I don't know the answer to. I do podcasts to learn things, like, shocker, right?
Well, I mean, there are some things that you do know. I think you want to, just because you and I know things, and every industry has acronyms, right? So
yeah, for sure.
Most people, when they invest in their 401ks, it goes into a mutual fund. For the most part, if you're putting money away for retirement, you know what a mutual fund is. Now we also have something that's an ETF, which is similar to a mutual fund, but has a lot of differences. So if I have an ETF issuer on the show, and you and I have been covering this, where they're converting mutual funds to ETFs, we know why, but I'm going to ask them, okay, as an investor, if I'm putting money in my 401k, should I go with a mutual fund or should I go with an ETF? I think the average person who's investing wants to know that answer.
Yeah, that's
so
fair.
While you and I have heard this a number of times, we produce over 1,500 hits. We don't have a classic broadcast schedule. So sometimes what you and I have heard, someone catching in, oh, you know what? I never heard of Trade Talks. Let me check out some of those videos. They're hearing it for the first time. We don't have a consistent schedule like that. So
do you think that works to our advantage?
I think it does.
I think it definitely does.
I think it definitely does, because you and I have the freedom of not being on a broadcast schedule. So sometimes, you know, our hits are 5 to 7 minutes, but there are times where if I'm in a good conversation with a guest and I want them to keep going, we could do that. I don't have a producer in my ear telling me to cut to commercial.
Right.
I also think the way that consumers are acquiring their news is no longer through the TV.
Right.
Right? I have 3 stepkids. I don't think they've turned on the TV, with the exception of sports, but they consume everything on YouTube, everything on TikTok. And this goes back to the user and content creator economy you and I are always talking about, where you don't need a studio. You don't need an agent. You don't need marketers and promoters. Everyone could create content, and the audience is going to determine what gets the views and what they want to see. And to me, that's really exciting. And I think that we were forward looking in having somewhat of a news-ish kind of show 5 years ago as a marketing tool to support our business units and listings. And now look where we are.
Yeah. You have to keep adapting. You have to keep adapting not only to your audience, but to the things that are out there. Like, I fought against TikTok forever because I don't get it. I hate doing things on my phone like that. But, you know, I created TikTok for Ambiguous podcast a few weeks ago, and boom, it's bigger than anything I've ever done. Like, it's weird saying, wow, this is the most views I've ever gotten, anything I ever created, and I posted it, and it's been 3 hours. Right? It's crazy. Like, that's what the people are. You gotta cater to where the people are. And the question I like to ask people, how do you consume content? That's your answer. Different from my answer, different from Christian's answer, different from everyone else's answer, your kids' stepkids' answer, your husband's answer. Everyone consumes content differently. So you got to cater to all those different things. Like, yes, we're on YouTube. We go live to YouTube. Is YouTube like live like that, huge like that in the middle of the afternoon? Probably not. But the replay value is still there.
Right.
Our audience is all on Twitter. Is live streaming to Twitter typically the best idea for most people? No, probably not. But for us, somehow it works.
Right. And I also actually I had this question asked to me when we were at the conference at Consensus, and you know, where can we find you? And it said Twitter,
Everywhere.
YouTube, LinkedIn, Nasdaq.com. And the platform that's your bread and butter is so key, because when we first started Trade Talks, it was distributed through Facebook. And I remember telling our head of social media at the time that Facebook is not a trader's audience. They might go there and see, you know, find out where their high school and college friends are now, or look at cat videos or whatever. Our audience are the traders that are scanning Twitter headlines, that are searching ticker symbols to see what the latest news is. Our distribution and our engagement skyrocket after that. Like, no one is going to Facebook for what you and I produce. We're dipping our toes a little bit via Mother Nasdaq social media on TikTok. And last week, in fact, 2 of our videos were one of the top 5 performers on TikTok. So the social editing team, they were able to hear, okay, this is what the TikTok audience cares about. And that's what worked. Twitter works for us. Instagram for us, Facebook for us. Our audience is looking at that on the commute, or maybe over the weekends, or doing some shopping, but they're not coming to that for news. They're going to Twitter for the headlines. And even when we were at the conference, our top performing hit last year was with Chainlink. And we weren't able to sync on an interview for Consensus, but the PR team came over and spoke to me, and they're like, we'll definitely get something scheduled for June or July in New York, because out of all the distribution channels, you guys go straight to Twitter. That is our audience. And when you look, especially in digital asset space, our content does the best because they're all engaging there. If we were to stream our content from Consensus on Facebook, I don't think anyone there even goes on Facebook. So it all depends what works best for you. Now, if you're a brand, a consumer brand, Facebook is probably going to work for you better. So I think finding your bread and butter and really putting your resources into that is where you want to be. And then repurposing that, to your point, to another platform where you think it might play well to test.
Yeah. Well, big thing is recycle your content, right? You have to reuse your content. I recorded podcasts months ago. I recorded clips for YouTube months ago, and stuff that I scheduled months in advance. But since I created TikTok, I can go back, right? That content is still relevant. I just might have to edit a little bit for TikTok. But it's all out there. And I tagged someone I did a podcast with 3 months ago. And he's like, oh, hey, awesome. Welcome to TikTok. Right? But like, you have to recycle your content. Even if your bread and butter isn't on Facebook, you should still put something on Facebook because people are still there. You just got to kind of figure out how to do it. So yes, to your point, focus more your resources towards your bread and butter, but you still have to be everywhere.
Of course. And the thing is,
that's why I have a newsletter.
Of course. And you can always redirect traffic back.
Exactly.
Right. And that is the whole point where you don't want to, in my experience, you don't want to spread yourself too thin where you're detracting from where your main platform is, but you can always slice and dice like you guys do and put it on different platforms and redirect them back to .com. That's how you build your traffic. So I think
it's all web.
Are we, the question is are there too many platforms? How do you pick and choose what works, what doesn't work? And you could test them out and see what works, but where you decide to focus your resources is, in my mind, really key. And we even see it at Nasdaq. There's different programs that we do where one stream's here, one stream's here. And that's what works. I know like when they do Meet Nasdaq, the influencer campaign that we have that takes place at MarketSite, they have that on Insta. They have it on TikTok. They're going where all the influencers are. And that's smart. Perhaps putting that on Twitter where we see more of the trading audience, that might not be like the first pass, the best place to go. So.
Not only that, like resources. Typically, you would think that with something as big as TradeTalks, we have a giant team, unlimited resources. No, it's just us. It's me and you. We are the A-team. Jill and Will. Kicking ass.
Yep. And not only in studio or remotely, but even when we go on the road now too. And then we have our road kit. You have never produced like that before. And it was, you had a couple, but you did fine.
I was so scared.
But it's like, it's practice.
No, I knew I was going to kill it.
And it's also, everything is so hands-on. It's almost like you can go to school for finance, but once you get on a trading desk, you could go to med school. I would imagine until you start doing your residency and doing the rounds and all that, it's different than what you learn in biology class. And it's repetition. As you know, I'm in school and I took a number of editing classes, and it was a crash course. I had to learn Audition and Premiere Pro in 16 weeks. And I had to reuse it for some stuff I'm doing, this year. And unless you're doing that every day, and of course those platforms are always evolving, it's challenging.
Always changing. Yeah. Yesterday I spent half my day on Adobe After Effects, just creating lower thirds. Because anytime I do a podcast like this in studio or remote, I want to have new graphics. Every time I have different lower thirds. So I haven't made the one for this podcast yet, but it's going to look different. Because the idea is like, listen, I am a podcaster. I also do editing. I am trying to sell my stuff. So if someone goes, oh, that's a great lower third. Hey, you like it? Great. You can buy it. Right? So like, that's why everything needs to be different. Always.
Yeah. And that's a challenge that we have because.
Well, we're different because like we're not selling production services. Nasdaq isn't. So like if it's uniform like that, that's fine. But for us, I would be like, listen, if I was in charge, I'd be like once a year, new graphics.
But I would love to, and we have been doing that for the most part, but I would love if we had more editorial control and could do some of those more fun things. Like, let's say we have a digital asset hit. We use this set of graphics. If we have something on each of these, again, we work for a global brand. We don't have that type of leniency, but I do get what you're saying.
They're all working on other things too.
Right.
Like I say it's me and you, but no, we have a lot of help from the broadcast team, the social team, the design team, but those are different teams. The TradeTalks team is Jill and Will.
Right. And to your point, I'm trying to learn different production platforms, and I'm in front of camera. And I do my own booking, my own scheduling, my own scripting. But I want to learn how to be more autonomous, whether it's NASDAQ or elsewhere, because what if we do stuff on the fly? What if we want to do a mini doc series? What if we, our design and editing teams are so busy on other projects? Well, if you and I get proficient at it, why can't we do it?
Yeah. You're like, hey, can you learn this? I go, yes.
Yep.
I'll figure it out.
Well, you never stop learning. Look, I'm 45. I'm in graduate school. I finished off my undergrad 2 years ago. You never stop learning. You never stop evolving. And I think, and if anything from this podcast, if you could take that away with you, whether it's going back to school, whether it's going for a specific class, whether it's a trade school, whether you want to identify what you think your passion is and just continue to learn, why wouldn't you? The resources are available. A lot of companies are actually offering like Nasdaq University, if you will, internally.
Mhm.
There are so many resources that are out there, but don't ever stop, because I'm telling you, at the pace that everything evolves, it's not going to wait for you.
You never turn down an opportunity. I mean, low-key, you guys hired me almost 3 years ago. Believe that? 3 years. It's been 3 years, Jill. Almost 3 years ago, you guys hired me, and I had no live stream experience. None. I was a podcaster. My interview, I talked podcasts, like hard. And then I talked to the people just on the land of the podcast. She's just like, yeah, it was your passion. More than anything is what really got you hired. I was like, I can learn this. And, you know, I learned live stream in like 2 weeks, not even. And I picked it up. And then once like 6 months later, the pandemic happened. It was just like,
Yeah.
what? I remember Leanne telling me, I'll never forget this. We were in like that main lobby outside of A when she come through security. She was just like, yeah, with the pandemic, like we might get you like 20 hours a week, maybe just a few hits here and there. And I was freaking out. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I talked to Chris and Ron, and we just came up with a plan. We did it from home, and we just made it work. I remember when I was hired, Anna told me, I was like, listen, we can probably give you 20 hours a week. And I was like, that's totally fine. I can do other things. I worked 40 hours a week almost every single week, other than holidays or like vacations.
And
or
then you
whatever.
came over to me full time, and it took off from there. I mean, we tripled our production.
Yeah, true. I was bounced around between two teams. Like, who do you work for? It's like, well, who do I work for? It's a great question.
Yeah, but it's good now that we have a focus for you and I. And
no, we know,
look
we know exactly what we're doing.
But look at how much we've been able to build it, not just from volume, but to continue to perfect the quality of the content. You know, in addition to always learning, I'm always afraid to plateau with the show. And it always has to evolve, because you know what? Everyone is a content creator these days, and you don't need a big brand behind you to necessarily do it. Of course, you need it for distribution and so forth, but you know, for content creators that have the leverage to do their own graphics, to, you know, make it as sexy as they want, we have to continuously, you know, perfect on our end.
Yeah. And you get to keep learning. I have learned an absurd amount of stuff over the past 2 years. Like, the fact that Christian can take this video feed and put it in this TV right here, and I know how that works. Yeah. Like, I can't believe I know that. And it's just been from just figuring it out and getting opportunities, getting chances. And someone's just like, well, like, how do you learn all this stuff? I was like, I don't say no. You know, you always do stuff. I'm going to go home. I'm going to try and learn something else. Because it's just like, I tell people I work all the time. Like, as soon as we log off at 3 o'clock, you know, I send my email, 5 o'clock hits. I don't stop working. I just go into something else. But to me, it's not really work. Like, this podcast is technically work. Like, our work is technically work. But I also like doing it. Like, it's fun. It's still a hobby. So it's like, I'm working 24/7 or I'm working 0/7. The difference is just mindset. Is this work or is this fun? It depends on my mood. And that's just really how it is.
That is cool.
So like how much do you consider everything you do work? Because obviously you enjoy what you do, but some of it is just I can't imagine you do all your own booking.
Yeah, that is work. And the volume of email that comes in, we're always shifting gears. I'm always starting and stopping. So it's not like I have a chunk of time where I can just sit and either do research or get my calendar in order, because not only is it all the email coming in, doing all the booking, doing all the vetting, especially on the digital asset side, there's a pitch for everything.
Yep, I get pitches.
It is so consuming. And then as you're trying to plow through your email inbox, then you have other projects you have to do. We're doing 7 to 10 hits a day. So I'm start, stop. That's what makes it challenging. That's the work part of it. When we were at the conference, every guest is like, how many of these do you do? Oh my God, that's got to be so hard. And I'm like, this is the easy part. This is the fun part.
Yeah, it's
herding
easy.
cats and getting your talking points and scheduling you in last minute switches. That's the busy work. This I want to learn about. I'm in grad school to learn the academia side of what I'm doing. That I enjoy. If I could take a sabbatical for 18 months and just focus on school, I need income and I need insurance, but I love to learn. If I had the luxury to do so, I'm already thinking, all right, grad school's done, 4 more classes to go. I graduate next May, 2023. I'm already thinking about what I want to do next.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. When I was younger, I used to know how to do sign language. There's two sets of sign language: ASL, American Sign Language, FSL, French Sign Language. What I would love to do is, we don't typically see financial literacy content with the host signing as well. And there are people out there that are hearing disabled that I think want to consume this content. I know there's closed caption. I know there's other technologies that are available that's out there, but I would love to go back to school and learn how to sign again and incorporate that into our content.
Oh, that'd be so easy.
So
That'd be so easy.
Right. But I also think it shows how, yes, the technology is out there for hearing impaired folks, whether it's closed caption or other digital audio tools that are available.
But they use sign.
But
yeah.
I also think, from the inclusivity perspective, if we're showing that we care about our audience that broadly, it's something I want to do. So I'm already thinking beyond grad school. What else am I going to do? I have a couple of other ideas, but I am so passionate about that that I think it will be just a great story to tell when we do Financial Literacy Month. I think it would be great to utilize as much as we can. Now, I don't have a time frame on it like I did for grad school, but I think it's something important that we should be doing. So I'm always thinking ahead like you are.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I would never even think of that, but I think no, like you could just literally like we're on Zoom, it's just an extra NDI input, and you just put them at the bottom, and they're signing away, like you see on TV. Right, we would do it the exact same way.
I would love to be the one signing.
Oh, you want to sign?
Yes.
How?
You could talk and sign. How do you think hearing impaired people?
Well, I mean, they sign.
Right,
and
I would like to be able to do that with them. I want to go back to school to learn it again.
But are you signing what you say, or are you signing what the guest says? Or both?
You could do both. You could do both.
That makes my brain. I don't think my brain could handle that.
But think about it.
It's like playing guitar and singing at the same time. You're doing two things at once. It's possible.
Here's the whole thing, though. I wish I was multilingual. That's the one deficiency that I have. And anywhere around the world, most people not only speak 2 languages, but 3, 4, 5 languages. So if you can flip back and forth, when people could speak Spanish one sentence and translate it in the next in English, if they can do it, we could do it with sign language. What's the difference?
No, you're right. I think that's something I've never seen before. Very innovative, and I say, let's do it.
When people sign, people that are hearing impaired, when they sign, you'll see their mouth move along with it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. Look, it's something to explore. No, I haven't seen anyone do it within our space, so why not?
No,
What's the downside?
I think that's an incredible idea. You have 100% sold me. Yeah, interesting. That sounds awesome. All right, let's go to grad school. So you've been in grad school for a while, and plus all this we do, plus grad school. Now, my girlfriend's in grad school, and she is just always working on every Sunday. It's like, I can't talk to you, I'm doing homework. Like, great, I can play video games. But so what are you going to grad school for?
So I go to the Rutgers School of Communication and Information Services. And our focus is, there's 2 parts that my focus is on. The overarching is digital media, because that's the space that we're in. And I've been leveraging it to learn production tools. And I'm also incredibly passionate about media law and policy.
Oh, I love media law.
And we were speaking about this before.
Yep.
If I could do Jill 2.0, I would love to pursue law. I love those classes. I love First Amendment law in undergrad. My media policy law I took last summer was amazing, just because there's so much going on with how this space is going to be regulated. And then my courses this semester focused on digital media innovation, which I was passionate about taking because this is what I'm reporting on. It's what I'm interested in. So be able to take what I know from reporting and implement it in my schoolwork, and then what I'm learning from academia and put that into my work. I feel like that really has been the inflection point for me. And I developed a prototype leveraging blockchain and NFTs for a charity. And my professor was like, this is one of the best projects I saw. He's like, you should find a way to execute on this. So being able to marry what we're doing in school and what we're producing on the show is an amazing opportunity. It's very rare that you're able to do that in an academia setting.
For sure. Damn, again, makes my mind hurt to think about it. But I don't know, Jill, you find a way to do it. You just figure it out. And people like to say I have a strong work ethic. I'm like, I do, don't get me wrong. But it's nice to work with someone who has just as strong, if not stronger, of a work ethic. But on top of all that, you manage me. So, I mean, and what I like about you as a manager is that you're very hands-on when appropriate, right? Otherwise, you just kind of let me work.
Yeah, I just let you roll. I feel, especially you as a content creator, micromanagement would definitely not work for you. You tend to think more out of the box, and why stifle that?
Yeah.
And again, because you and I are such a tiny team, we need to establish that trust. Like, you need to trust me that I'm building out this schedule, that I'm bringing quality guests on, that we're doing the best we can to make sure we have a place within this organization. And I think letting you provide direction and allow you to be creative only makes the show better. You and I will never have a scripted day.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like, okay, we have a meeting here, we do this, we do that, we go to lunch then. We'll never, ever have a scripted day. And because of that, you and I are able to pivot incredibly quick. I mean, think about the pandemic. Our last day was Friday the 13th, March 20th. We had to figure out how to produce on Monday, the 16th. And yes, it evolved from audio to iPad to, as we started getting more equipment in.
Yep.
And, here we are now where AV built out a studio for us at home, which allows us to not only support, our 12 to 3 o'clock time slot, but we can work EU in the morning. We can work APAC at night. You remember last year in November,
Yep.
we worked APAC hours.
Oh, it was great.
I thought it was great too.
I loved it. It was like it was starting at 9, ending at 3 in the morning. I'm
Yeah.
like, let's do it.
Right. And
I woke up at noon. I had the whole day to do whatever I wanted.
And it also gave us a chance because having your out of the office message on sometimes is so great because you catch up on work and it's understood. Look, I'm working APAC hours or I'm on the ground at a conference. I actually got so much done in Austin, even though we were jamming every day, just because I had time to focus. But we have the ability to pivot. Oh, I need to take someone 15 minutes earlier, or we need to squeeze another hit in because we have our process down and we've been creative enough to figure out how to pivot.
Yeah. It's weird. Like, I tell people my job is really easy. Like, I'm just like, yeah, this is what I do. It's really easy. Like, I could do more. Like, I always think I can do more than I'm currently doing. But then I see someone else try and do it, and I go, oh, this is hard.
Well,
like, I don't know if it's me or just not. I don't know what it is, but seeing someone else do what you do every day and not do it how you do it, you go, oh, I could do this business better, that better. It's like, oh, this is actually difficult.
I think, honestly, Will, the pandemic from a production perspective, not only for you and I, but what the world learned from virtually operating in a media production environment, not only got more diverse folks on the show, whether it's us, whether it's CNBC, you didn't have the same people on all the time. But to be honest, if we were still producing the way that we produced prior to the pandemic, it would not have been enough for you.
Yeah.
It just, look how much you and I have learned in the past 2 years. And I think that's a silver lining of it. Why we were able to triple our volume, why we were able to increase the quality of the show and get higher caliber guests on, if that's the right way to say it. But I don't think it would have been enough for you and I, because we went from producing 4 or 5 hits from 2 to 3, which was always, it was like a waiting room, getting people in and out. We had only time for 5-6 minute interviews by the time we got them in the chair, mic'd up.
Yep.
Keep everything on track.
We did everything like an hour and a half.
Now we have 12 to 3.
We did it all day.
Now we could do it all day. Now we have the opportunity to have more thoughtful conversations. And it wasn't just like a factory. I don't think that would have been enough for you and I. We needed to do more, and we got the opportunity to do it. I just can't see myself going through that routine.
Yeah. No, I don't like routines. I like routines. I like doing the same routine differently.
Structure is important.
Structure's good.
But the way that it was prior to, where we didn't have the ability to be as creative or as autonomous as we are now, I don't think would have been enough.
Yeah.
Knowing what we know now.
Yep. And, hindsight's always 20/20. And
of course.
We did it right. We did it the right way. We're going to continue to do it the right way, because I'm not going anywhere, Jill. I'm going to be here for a very, very long time.
You're stuck with me.
Good. Perfect. All right, Jill, I think that is a perfect place to wrap up. There's more we could totally get into, but that means got to bring it back another time. But before we go, I like to throw a little curveball. The last question always goes to the guest. So you asked me one in the beginning. That's totally fine. Anything you've ever wanted to ask me, now is your chance.
Why is wrestling your topic of choice?
Immediately, you've been wanting to ask me that for a long time. Wrestling, my topic of choice. It wasn't. It kind of fell in my lap. So in college, you're actually gonna get a kick out of this. So I'll go back to high school. In high school, I started a blog about movie reviews. I called it Willie T Reviews. Yeah, hilarious. It's still out there. I don't know how to get rid of it, but it's there and it's terrible. I hate it. Don't look for it. But I did that to stand out on college applications, right? Because I was like, okay, my grades are okay, I was a B student, but I need to stand out if I want to get into the college I want to get into. So I wrote a blog and put it on my resume. I think it worked. I don't know. But I was in college, so it's like I need to do the same thing. I'm listening to all these. I started listening to podcasts in junior high school. So I'm listening to all these podcasts. Like, I need to do something to stand out on job applications. It's like, okay, let me do a podcast. How do I do that? It took me forever. But I was home for Christmas break, my sophomore year of college, and we're in my buddy Phil's basement, and my Christian was talking about wrestling or talking about whatever, and Christian just goes, Will, we should start a podcast. And boom, light bulb goes off.
So you know him for a long time.
No, different Christian.
Oh.
Different Christian from high school. And we came up with the name, idea for a logo, all in that basement. And then I went home, I did some Googling, did a lot of Googling. I bought a $100 kit on Amazon, gave me a little mixer, a mic, and editing software, but I didn't use it because I had auditioned through Hofstra. Got back to school, and okay, now I got to create an RSS feed. How do I do that? And then a lot of Googling. I got a WordPress website. I used a service called Mediafire, which I still use. Take a download link and put it into the post, which made it go to the RSS feed. Don't know how it worked. But wrestling was the topic of choice because I watch wrestling. I've been watching wrestling since middle school. And it just kind of fell in my lap. Let's do this podcast. Christian lasted 9 episodes. I did a few on my own. I was this close to quitting. And my friend Dave was just like, I'll do it with you. And then I did it with my friend Dave. He brought in Ricky. A few years later, we replaced Dave with K. Murphy. And then here we are. So I just love wrestling. I watch wrestling. It's the stupidest entertainment, but I love it. And then it's fun talking about it. Every Wednesday night, we are live to YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and wherever else we can go. We're expanding. But it's just fun. It's fun every Wednesday hopping on my chair and just getting on camera and just... Ricky writes an outline. I don't even look at it. I don't need to look at it. I can just get on and go. Because I didn't write anything down for this podcast. I know you. Mm-hmm. Now, when Alan, I write a lot of things down because I don't know Alan or certain people. But I can just go. It's just very easy. It's become second nature to me. But wrestling just fell in my lap as an opportunity.
My brother and I loved wrestling when we were kids, and Ultimate Warrior was my favorite wrestler. Fun fact about Jill.
Rest in peace, Ultimate Warrior. But ladies and gentlemen, that'll wrap it up for another episode of the Talkin' with Tarashuk podcast. Jill, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Look forward to coming back. It was fun.
It was a lot of fun. Please tell people where they can find you, TradeTalks, anything you want to plug. Floor is yours.
You can find us on Twitter at TradeTalks. You can also find me at Jill Malandrino on Twitter. And of course, all of our content lives on YouTube under the Nasdaq channel. And we have all of our verticals there. You can find our content.
And ladies and gentlemen, you know where to find all my shenanigans. But one more time for the people at home. My name is Will Tarashuk. That is T as in Thomas, Arashuk. This has been the Talking with Tarashuk podcast. Find all of our other podcasts on ambiguouspodcastsolutions.com or anywhere you find your podcast. That's Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Amazon. We are everywhere. 25 plus platforms worldwide. Ladies and gentlemen, our other show is, our other segment of the show is the Unknown Unnamed Nonsense, where me and Christian and a guest, if you want, get on the podcast, have a giant list of random questions, no idea what's going to be asked, and we just riff and we just go, and it's unknown, unnamed, complete and utter nonsense. If you want to be a guest on this podcast where we sit down one-on-one, or that podcast, we have a lot more fun, email me at will@apspodcast.com. That's will@apspodcast.com. And if I go, ooh, that's interesting, you'll be interviewed one way or the other. But until then, I'm Will Tarashuk. That's Jill Malandrino. We'll be back next time. But until then, y'all take care.